Story 1. Shopping at many different stores to take advantage of all the various deals was an all-day adventure just to survive. I had $60 a week to feed and buy toiletries for 2 teenagers. At the local corner store, I could buy day-old bread, hot dog buns, etc. after 12 p.m. each night for 25 cents if they had good bread. I would buy 2 loaves and put them in the freezer. For protein, Save-On had a 12-pack of chicken burgers for $2.99. It was a good day when they went on sale for $1.50 or $1.99. Deli meat ends were also available. Save-On would package up the unsliced ends of their deli meat, offering a mix of different meat chunks at an 80% discount. Safeway had the best price on a flat of eggs, costing the same as a 12-pack anywhere else. They also had the cheapest 2-liter of soda. Staples like noodles, pasta, sauce, and soups were typically available at the bargain shop, often at up to 75% off. I did most of my shopping there. The dollar store was great for toilet paper, spices, toothpaste, and similar items. If I was lucky, I would have $5 left over to splurge on the dollar menu burgers from the fast food restaurant for my partner and me once a week. It would take me all day to walk around town just to get supplies for the week. It was utterly exhausting trying to stay afloat. One slightly expensive purchase could mean going without in some area. Being able to drive and get all my shopping done in one spot, without the need for serious mental math and the worry of going over budget, is a luxury. Story 2. When I was a child, we were poor, so the electricity company installed prepaid meters in our home to prevent us from going into debt. If the meter ran down to 0 credit, it required a £20 top-up, an amount of money we never had. I would check the meter, and if it got near 0, I would flip the switch to turn off the power to our entire home. We would go without electricity for the rest of the day, which meant we could then load the minimum amount the next day, which was £5. In summary, if the credit went below 0, it was £20. If it stayed just above 0, it was £5. Thankfully, we are all doing much better these days. Story 3. Making something edible out of the very little and very random items still in your pantry and fridge. I have made some dishes that look or sound unappealing when described, but they are actually not that bad and, in some cases, have become comfort meals for me. Story 4. Using something at a normal pace and then gradually decreasing the amount used to conserve it for as long as possible. Story 5. Being happy with whatever dinner is. I do not care what I eat. This makes dinner plans effortless. Story 6. How to work 20-hour days at 3 different jobs. Fortunately, I did not have to do this all the time, but there were periods where I was forced into the schedule while attending school full-time. I still earned my bachelor's degree. Story 7. I wouldn't recommend it, but I am trying to see how long I can go without my medications before I feel off from not taking them. It is difficult when I cannot afford the next dose when they run out. Story 8. What comes to mind is the things we do to stay awake while transitioning from one shift to another, like sitting far forward in the car seat and slapping my face. I have even sniffed hand sanitizer before. Story 9. I want to take a moment to acknowledge that you are worth more than just your struggles. You have so much value, and I appreciate you and everything you do. I am very proud of you. Story 10. Duct tape is cheaper than buying new items or hiring a repair professional. I have repaired shoes, backpacks, pipes, a car bumper, holes in the wall, and many other things with duct tape. Story 11. Being in pain and uncomfortable. I cannot afford to go to the doctor. I finally have insurance now, but the copays and tests are very expensive. I just push through whatever it is, hope for the best, or try home remedies. When I did not have insurance and needed medical attention, like when my kidney was in severe pain, I learned how to convince doctors to prescribe their best guess without all the labs and imaging because I could not afford it. Pro tip: Walmart has antibiotics that cost only $5, so you can ask your doctor to choose a suitable antibiotic from that list. Story 12. Wicked sense of humor. When you're accustomed to things going wrong, it's amazing how you learn to cope through laughter. Story 13. Driving with expired license plates can be stressful. It is important to pay attention to who is approaching from behind rather than just focusing on what is in front of you. In Kansas, where forward-facing plates are not required, it is essential to have a strategy for turns, especially if you spot a police officer. This attention to detail can add to the stress of driving. Story 14. When you grow up in Section 8, you have a community that shares items one may not be able to afford at the moment. Story 15. Arriving early at the donut store to purchase the bag of day-old donuts on the counter, as they offered the most satisfying calories for your money. Story 16. Never eating breakfast or lunch is known as intermittent fasting. I have trained for it for a long time. Story 17. Using coupons to your advantage can lead to significant savings. For instance, you might find a 50-cent discount on a box of macaroni and cheese during a buy one, get one promotion. Digital coupons are widely available, so it's helpful to search for them before you shop to maximize your savings. Story 18. Throwing food away was not allowed. It was still good if it hadn't yet spoiled. We would find a way to use all odds and ends in a recipe. This is how I learned that peanut butter works well when braising pork in soy sauce. I also became skilled at frying rice and slow-cooking tough cuts of meat. Remember when oxtail, short rib, and hanger were inexpensive cuts? Leftovers were rare, and my sister and I had our own tricks to hide the best ones from each other in the fridge. Story 19. I know how to appear as if I belong somewhere I do not, and I utilize restrooms, phone charging, or drinking water while I am there. It is more cost-effective to dress in a timeless, classic style than to follow trends. I have been thrifting since before it was popular, and while it made me look a bit more mature for my age when I was younger, it gave me the confidence to walk into high-end places as if I belong there. Story 20. Overdraft fee was $35. Maximum withdrawal was $400. This results in a $400 loan for $35, which is approximately 8.75%. That is a competitive rate for a payday loan. Story 21. Being able to juggle two jobs, not just the time commitment, but also ensuring your shifts don't overlap. Story 22. I carefully evaluated whether I actually needed an item from the store and if I could replicate it with what I already had. Story 23. I learned that for a while, I can survive on half a bowl of rice every other day. As you can imagine, it isn't healthy, and you lose a significant amount of weight, but still, it got me through a difficult time. Story 24. Many grocery stores have a section where baked goods and other items go on sale because they are about to expire soon. You can get some tasty food that way. Story 25. Personally, it was small things my mother taught me as she grew up in poverty. Eating the entire slice of pizza, including the crust. Keeping every ounce of change in shoeboxes. Getting good at haggling, especially for items at work or school, and sneaking food out of buffets when possible. And library visits. We would always read to pass the time. My mother was a great teacher, and she helped me a lot in school during my early years. Story 26. Mine is pretty much the same as everyone else's. I fed myself on about $10 a week. It was a bit easier in 2009 than it would be today. I relied on day-old bread, bananas, rotisserie chickens, and inexpensive canned food. I knew where all the fruit trees were in the area, so when apple season arrived, I could eat as much as I wanted. The same was true in the summer with black raspberries. I had a friend who worked at a local pretzel shop, and sometimes they would give me a bag of their day-old products. It was just a period of my life until I got a new roommate to share the bills with. I was young and resilient, and I look back at that time with a strange sense of fondness. Story 27. Adding water to the shampoo when it's running low can help you get more uses from it. You can refill the bottle multiple times and still get enough shampoo out. This can help keep your hair from looking greasy and prevent teasing at school. Story 28. I don't complain. I minimize any discomfort as if it is my job. I will eat anything, walk, or wait for hours. I can endure being cold or hot. I may experience moderate discomfort or pain for a considerable time. I will take 3 buses, 2 trains, and walk a mile if it means I am not spending money or inconveniencing anyone. Suck it up and get on with it was a cornerstone of my childhood survival. I also have naps for dinner. I engage in creative food procurement. I have dumpster dived and once obtained a whole log of provolone cheese, still shrink-wrapped but past its use-by date, by far my biggest score to date. I have picked up roadkill on more than one occasion, but only if I saw it get hit or hit it myself. I would not pick up roadkill randomly, and I obviously do not hit animals on purpose. Ask me how I know you can fit a field-dressed deer in the footwell of a Chevrolet Cavalier. I have engaged in light shoplifting. My dad was the master, having once stolen several live lobsters and a dozen donuts from a store. I am not on his level. I show up at work events or similar occasions and bring a bag for the leftover food at the end of the night. Story 29. No fridge, so I need to measure how long anything lasts at room temperature. Forget the 2-hour rule and hope for the best. Story 30. How to cook meals based around inexpensive carbohydrates. Costco used to sell a 50-pound bag of rice for $15. That would last me a long time, and I would find creative ways to enhance rice. A can of beans, maybe a hot dog. I would fish in a local stream and fry up some bass. Egg fried rice was always a treat. There are endless ways to prepare rice dishes. Potatoes are almost as versatile and easy to pair. My favorite was a can of chili poured over baked potatoes. I haven't done that in a long time. I might have that for dinner tonight. Story 31. Improvising in tough situations makes your brain enter survival mode and forces it to find solutions to problems. Story 32. Willingness to do menial jobs in order to keep paying the bills is crucial. Often, I see people unwilling to take good-paying jobs because they feel it is beneath them. Remember, not having a job puts money in your hand. Do the work. Story 33. How to survive with nothing. I was abandoned and homeless as a teenager. I couldn't get a job because I needed parental permission, and they weren't in the country. I endured 2 years of hardships and emerged confident in my ability to handle almost anything life threw at me, even with literally nothing. There is always a way. Story 34. How to start my car with a coat hanger bent to the solenoid. And how to express my car's anal glands. Story 35. On an older car I had, the brakes were worn out. I couldn't afford new brakes, so I learned to slow the car down by shifting into low gear and using the handbrake. It was pretty foolish and probably very dangerous, but I managed to get a new car and a new job before I had to spend any money on maintenance. Story 36. Shopkeeper view. For some kind but very poor individuals, we would add up the bill and mentally have it, then charge them that amount. We also had many itinerants who stayed at a local field site in their vans and tents, and we gave them credit. It was always eventually repaid. Sometimes we would receive payment in bags of pennies from their jars on the shelf in their houses or vans. We never checked the pennies. We were confident it was always correct. Some people who appear down and out can always be trusted. Story 37. My friends know me as the person who can fix anything. I learned out of necessity and from people around me who took pride in making things. Story 38. Buying items at Goodwill and transforming unappealing things into appealing ones. Repairing, cleaning, painting, and using Haynes manuals from the public library helped me learn to fix my own car. Story 39. Neck of lamb is the cheapest cut at a butcher, costing literally a couple of euros. Can be tricky to cut the meat off, but you get the hang of it. Bag of carrots from Lidl or Aldi. Net of onions from Lidl or Aldi. 1 leek from Lidl or Aldi. 2 packets of stew spices from Lidl or Aldi. The whole lot costs about 11 euros to 12 euros, maybe 15 euros if you splurge on branded spice packets. You can make 1 large Irish stew. Freeze it in a large Ziploc bag. Nowadays, I would probably use separate small bags, but back then, this was by far the biggest overhead. To serve, peel the bag off and cut a slice of your frozen stew log with a bread knife. Heat and eat daily, and you could eat for 7 to 10 days. Start your morning with a massive bowl of porridge. This was my routine in the afternoon. It was boring, but I didn't starve. Story 40. Being happy with less. I used to be happy only when I had a Coca-Cola and a cigarette, for example. Now I can find happiness in water and nothing else. All this unnecessary stuff makes you addicted. Story 41. Barter economies and favored economies. How to manage a fire in a wood stove so that it will keep you warm for most of the night, and how to estimate how much wood you will need to stay warm for the next week. Story 42. Refilling a Bic lighter with butane and using a push pin to seal it allows me to refill my Bic lighter multiple times instead of paying $4 for a new one. Story 43. My expenses consisted mainly of a monthly grocery bill from the cheapest store and a $10 monthly phone subscription. Story 44. An appliance in our house was not considered broken unless it completely stopped turning on. For at least a year, we had to use our washing machine by standing next to it and manually turning the dial to the next cycle when we thought it was ready, or more accurately, turning the knob around 3 or 4 times until it responded. Story 45. Accepting whatever you were offered and never asking for more. Not expecting to receive anything additional. Placing newspaper in the toes of your shoes because they were too big. So many experiences. Story 46. I learned how to work hard for hours without stopping, to the point of exhaustion, and do it again the next day. Although I do not work that hard anymore, it still surprises me how lazy many people who have never had to struggle for success can be. Story 47. Extreme budgeting involves making £20 to £30 worth of shopping last for 2 weeks while ensuring a meal every day. Story 48. Cook and, more importantly, eat pasta with vinegar for months because it is the cheapest option. Story 49. How to cook. This is not about ordering a meal from a delivery service, but rather adopting an old-school mindset of being resourceful. You purchase a meat product and 2 to 3 canned foods to create a meal. I sustained myself this way after college, and it was a humbling experience. Story 50. Stealing napkins in fast food restaurants without purchasing anything and using them as toilet paper. Searching for soda cans on recycling days to sell. Searching through dumpsters for bread, fruits, or anything still edible. Utilizing community kitchens and free municipal indoor pools for showers. Story 51. If you paid for petrol or parking on your card, the bank would not decline the transaction even if you were at your overdraft limit. Story 52. The ability to make a substantial meal out of almost nothing. To be quite honest, despite being in a much more financially secure position these days, I'll still whip up some of the concoctions we all came up with. Story 53. Fixing anything. I have been repairing appliances, cars, clocks, furniture, and floors since I was a child. Now it is my job, and wealthy clients pay me to fix their broken items. I am often amazed by how simple some fixes can be. Story 54. Make sure that you do not eat all of your food in case you get hungry later and do not have anything else to eat. I can usually make 3 or 4 meals out of a typical sized meal. I eat until my stomach stops hurting. Story 55. Reading all these comments, I want to express my frustration with capitalism. I oppose the idea that a select few hoard resources while the majority faces extreme conditions. Story 56. Turning a can of beans, half an onion, and old rice into a gourmet meal and convincing myself it's fine dining. Additionally, the art of fixing things with tape, string, and sheer willpower. Story 57. Making the room smaller by hanging sheets, so the hairdryer will only have to heat a small section. Avoid doing this on the side with a window, as there is likely a draft. Story 58. Bread sacks. Instead of using snow boots, save the plastic bread sacks when the loaf is gone and put one over each sock. Shoes may get wet, but socks and feet will stay mostly dry for a while. Story 59. My wife comes from an above-average financial background, while I come from a family that struggled to keep the lights on. Here are some things I wish she understood. For groceries, it's important to buy items that are on sale and to consume those instead of whatever you desire. We should organize food by expiration dates and prioritize eating items before they spoil. Additionally, we should limit dining out when we have fresh food available in the house. Hoarding useful items that could be used for repairs or as alternatives in the future can be beneficial. While this behavior can sometimes be excessive and problematic, there are advantages to keeping items that are genuinely useful instead of discarding them and planning to purchase replacements when necessary. Many free or low-cost social events and activities exist that provide opportunities for enjoyment without a financial burden. Some people mistakenly believe that the only social activities are concerts, bars, or dining at restaurants and coffee shops. However, there are numerous fun social events where no payment is required. which are often undervalued in today's society, as we tend to associate lower costs with lesser value. Basic social skills can be vital for survival at times, enabling individuals to obtain essential needs through being interesting or resourceful. Those who can always afford their basic necessities may not possess this skill set. I know there is likely more to consider. Story 60. Living in China taught me that you can live forever on rice and salad fried in oil with soy sauce. Yes, you can fry fresh green beans with rice. Story 61. Checking and converting the price per unit in my head seems straightforward, but the units used by different brands of the same product often vary. One may be in ounces, the next in milliliters, and another by weight. Nowadays, you can look it up on your phone. In the past, I had rough conversions memorized. I also realized that some companies take advantage of the assumption that buying a larger package will result in a lower price per unit. In reality, the largest packages may sometimes be a few cents higher per unit. For example, purchasing a 36-pack of toilet paper can, on certain days and with some brands, be 5% more expensive than buying 3 12-packs. Story 62. Garbage picking is not for eating, although many people rely on it for that purpose. It involves gathering items that can be painted, fixed, or repurposed. Those rusty lawn chairs a neighbor discarded? With a $5 can of Rust-Oleum, they can look like new. Now we have a patio set. Story 63. I was very poor at university. With 1 week left of the term, I had 7 pence to my name. I bought a potato and had a dry jacket potato. My flatmate kindly gave me some butter, so it wasn't a complete loss. I didn't eat for a week afterward. I earn a good wage now, but the experience never leaves you. You're always one redundancy away from a meal that costs 7 pence. Story 64. Wearing clothes until the fabric starts disintegrating and then making other items from the parts that are still intact has its value. I had a pencil case I made from jeans, complete with pockets. It was my most cherished possession and accompanied me for nearly 10 years of education. Story 65. Learned how to break down a whole turkey into the breast, thighs, legs, wings, and other parts. Deb 1 and grind the thighs for burgers or burritos. Make soup or stock from the back, wings, and bones. Soak a cup of cracked wheat or barley in beef broth to stretch ground beef. Or use chicken broth if you're using ground turkey thighs. Use this mixture in tacos, burritos, or meatloaf. Story 66. Knowing when it is time to leave can be important. When you are somewhere and suddenly the atmosphere feels off, it may be time to go. I have experienced this a few times because I was with someone who did not understand that when it is time to leave, it really is time to leave. Story 67. Tuna casseroles can be simple or extravagant. By buying a gallon of milk and after cleaning out the old one, you can make powdered milk and then mix half of the powdered milk with regular milk, resulting in 2 gallons of milk. Knowing the local farmer and stopping to buy eggs, butter, and milk from them was common in the 1970s and 1980s. Story 68. After paying for apartment bills, gas for the car, and medical expenses, I had nothing left. I learned how to discreetly take food from Walmart by identifying blind spots in their security cameras, moving around the store, and gradually placing items in a bag before exiting through a side entrance, such as the gardening center or automotive center, where there was usually no one at the door. Story 69. How to fix things: car, washing machine, home repairs. I couldn't afford to pay someone to do it, so I taught myself. Story 70. I learned how to hustle more fortunate kids out of their money at a young age. I was always good at selling and calculating profit percentages. For example, I would find candy bars on clearance at a low price and sell them for a significant profit during school breaks when the school did not sell them. Story 71. Did your item break? Go to the store, get a new one, place the broken item in the box, and return it. That's what happens when you sell low-quality DVD players that break in under a year. Story 72. How to sew or knit anything and be able to replicate a garment just by looking at a photo. It might not be exclusively a low-income issue, but it comes from growing up with a mother who had to make rather than buy. Story 73. Not wasting food is like a new age religion. The meat doesn't smell? Okay, just in case, chop it up and fry it with rice, scallions, and maybe some peas if there are still any in the freezer. Pick out half of the spinach from the bag that hasn't turned into sludge, rinse it, and if it goes into the soup without anyone questioning it, then it tastes the same, right? Taking turns reading the circulars, we realize that something is off and see how much we can buy with the money left. Story 74. Getting one overdraft fee instead of several. I grew tired of paying overdraft fees due to overwhelming debt, which led me to file for bankruptcy with my ex-wife at 20. I learned that if I spend up to my limit on food, I could receive $300 cash back to help cover bills until my next paycheck, all for a nominal one-time fee. Story 75. When I was young, I was very poor. Then I got my dream job, worked hard, retired, and now I am considered well off. My wife and I mostly shop at Lidl and Aldi because they offer quality products at low prices. We purchase expensive items like cars and iPhones, but we always search for the best prices. Even if I only save a couple of pounds, I feel great. Story 76. Blending in with the privileged. I have a sought-after and well-paying job, but I will never be one of them. Story 77. If you cannot afford to fill up your oil tank in the winter, you can get by for a night or two with diesel fuel from the gas station. It helped prevent my pipes from freezing solid a few times in my old house. Story 78. From my early childhood, I called it my rescue disc routine. Essentially, it involved a metal snow saucer, and it has saved my life multiple times. However, I'm too old and too heavy for it now. Story 79. SBC spaghetti tastes good hot or cold and lasts for a long time. It is convenient because it remains edible without the need for heating. Story 80. Going without. I have been homeless for half my life, and my last experience was in a remote area with a high cost of living. You don't realize that all you need is some food, a place to sleep, a way to make a little money, and a week's worth of clothes and toiletries. No fancy electronics or designer items. My clothes come from Costco and Walmart. I can go a long time between meals and have even used my car's engine to heat food. I also learned how to work on my own cars because I can't afford a mechanic. Story 81. Turning anything into a meal. A spoonful of rice, an egg, and a random sauce packet suddenly becomes dinner. Story 82. Learn to enjoy a good night's sleep instead of a late meal. Dollar store ramen. 3 packs for $1. When visiting your family's house for Christmas, be sure to request some leftovers to take home. Story 83. Not so much for survival, but I learned basic home repairs such as how to change my light fixtures, which has saved me quite a bit of money. Story 84. Buying one pair of shoes every other year feels luxurious and indulgent when I purchase another pair within the same year. Story 85. Learning how to be happy with what you have is important. Some people may feel disappointed when they receive store-brand snacks instead of gourmet options. I am sitting here happily enjoying my food while others appear confused by their choices. Story 86. Basic carpentry, plumbing, and electrical work are skills I possess. I can also work on my vehicles, including rebuilding engines. When you have limited resources, you learn to fix things yourself. I had a small farm where we grew much of the food we ate. Story 87. While I am not poor enough to ruin my life if I lost a paycheck, I am frugal enough not to spend more than 50 cents on a grocery bag. Norwegian plastic grocery bags cost more than 50 cents each. Now, I just take the entire shopping basket home and return it later. I'm not inconsiderate. Story 88. There is usually at least $1 in change if you look through all the couch cushions. That is enough to buy a pack of ramen. Story 89. Comparing prices to get the best deal and waiting for something I want to decrease in price so it becomes suitable for me to purchase. Story 90. Siege mentality. It works. When you plan ahead for any siege, you will not only survive when the siege comes but often prosper. Story 91. When I was a child in the 1980s, my mother had a television that you had to insert a coin into the back of to watch. My father burned a hole in the back of it with a pin so he could flick the mechanism inside to extend the viewing time. Eating is challenging. You get used to eating the same thing repeatedly. I spent 3 months on instant noodles once, and now I can't eat them without feeling nauseous. I've eaten so many beans on toast that I can no longer eat that either. I ration bacon, cheese, and butter, I am good at mathematics from walking around a supermarket adding up everything to ensure that I do not exceed my budget. Story 92. Planning your shopping. For us, it was the freight salvage store, the bread store, and then the grocery store. Sam's Club would put all their meat on sale Thursday morning, and the grocery store would do theirs on Sunday morning. Story 93. Sewing. I can sew anything. Cooking, using seasonings to make less than premium foods taste exceptional. Cleaning shoes. You may laugh, but being able to meticulously clean your shoes greatly enhances their appearance. Story 94. Food is sustenance. It doesn't matter what it is or where it came from, you eat it to survive. Insects are high in protein. Self-diagnosis of medical issues is important. Learning how to relocate your own limbs or use splints can help, as one trip to the emergency room can lead to substantial expenses. Knowing how to defend yourself is essential. For some reason, people often pick fights, show ignorance, and exhibit bigotry towards those who are less fortunate. Discipline is crucial. Time is valuable, and with strict scheduling, you cannot complain. You must fix issues yourself. Additionally, in the absence of parental structures, you learn at a very young age how to work hard because you must work harder than wealthier individuals to achieve less. Story 95. How to sleep in vehicles in the winter. How to tuck your sheet or blanket to minimize bugs crawling on you because you are on the floor or outside. A pool float makes a good portable bed. Eggs with milk, cheese, and thinly sliced meat mixed and heated in the microwave make a hot breakfast for the family. The endless uses of ramen just to change things up. The many ways I have prepared or not a package of hot dogs. Smiling while serving food to others while you are starving is even worse when you have to throw it away. Rock identification for fire starting and cooking. Story 96. Eating with minimal resources like mustard on plain noodles to survive or simply going without food. Budgeting effectively. Recognizing people in situations to avoid. Flipping items to make money. Finding the signal in the noise and focusing on what truly matters. The list goes on. The struggle is something I would do all over again because you cannot teach experience. You have to live it and earn it. Story 97. I learned to repair anything because I grew up having nothing new and couldn't afford to replace anything. That kick-started my career in electrical engineering. Story 98. Toasting moldy bread is edible. In fact, you learned that cooking food thoroughly reduces the risks of getting poisoned by spoiled items. Yes, meat can be tough and vegetables may lack flavor, but it's better than starving. Not all dumpster diving results in discarded food. Some grocery stores are too lazy or hire someone who cares about the homeless to manage their trash. Some deli counters will sell you their leftover items for a low price. Those who recognize you as a regular may even offer additional items. Cooking ramen by soaking it in hot tap water from a gas heater when the power is out, or boiling water on an electric stove when the gas is out but electricity is available for baths and washing. An electric oven can be left open for heat. Do not do this with gas. You learn what uses electricity and what uses gas, and whom to prioritize with urgent payments. It's important to tell children not to answer the door, and when an unknown person comes by, to hide. That knock. Those who know recognize that specific type of knock at the door. Story 99. I slept next to the front door for warmth when my gas had been turned off. I lived in an apartment with enclosed hallways where each entrance was located. I couldn't afford to pay my gas bill during winter. I slept next to the door to catch some warmth from the hallway, and it worked. Story 100. I don't know if this counts, but eating what is in front of you is important. I would need to really dislike it or think it is spoiled before throwing it out. Story 101. I am not great at math, but I kept a rough estimate of what was in my cart while I shopped. At the end, I loaded the counter with essential items first and asked the cashier to let me know when I got close to my budgeted amount. As the cost approached my limit, I considered the items at the end and decided what to put back if I exceeded my budget. I was on food assistance and researched how to make my own cleaning products using items like vinegar and baking soda. A quarter cup of baking soda, a quarter cup of sugar, and a tablespoon of honey make an excellent body scrub or face scrub. The honey acts as a natural moisturizing antiseptic. The sugar serves as an abrasive that does not dry your skin, And the baking soda cleans. You can add any essential oils you like if you can afford them. I hid money in the house to pay the electric bill or rent so my ex would not spend it all on video games and social outings. Books worked well, but he caught on. I stuffed money in the bases of statues or in the back of picture frames, some in tea tins, or in my jewelry box that had a hidden inset in one of the drawers. I closed off each room in the house with blankets hung over doorways and used a space heater to only heat the room my son and I were in, as we could not afford the oil heat built into the house. I only asked for gift cards for Christmas and then used those to buy presents for other people's birthdays throughout the year. Story 102. It's the art of making enough out of absolutely not enough. A wealthy person might understand saving, but they would likely never know the mental gymnastics of turning one meal into three or the instinct for finding value where others see waste. It is a survival-born creativity they thankfully never had to learn. Story 103. I was never extremely poor, but I was quite cash-challenged after my first separation. My survival skill was tracking my money very carefully, something my ex-wife had never bothered with. I ate a lot of chicken and hamburgers. After a few years of that, I went out for dinner with friends and spent the unheard of amount of $40 on dinner. Pure extravagance. Story 104. I learned to make a fire to heat the water in the tank for a shower. Visiting friends and experiencing heated floors was a whole new level for my brother and me. Story 105. Knowing which products are available at the dollar store that are the same as those found at higher-end retailers is important. Items such as pain relievers and various snacks are often simply excess inventory. Story 106. The value of coupon and deal hunting. I am no longer considered poor. If anything, I'm upper middle class, but I still have the same habits of getting a good deal. Story 107. Being able to substitute anything for something cheaper. Making a meal from an empty kitchen. Spreading $20 over a full week. When you are poor, you are in constant survival mode, and there is nothing you can do about it except keep trying. Story 108. In my early career, I often ate beans straight out of the can for many of my meals. It worked, and I consumed enough to survive. When I got bored, I would add a little brown sugar and move on with my life. I still look back on those beans with a sense of warmth. Story 109. In the 2000s, my parents incurred a large bill and couldn't afford to pay both cable companies. For 3 years, my enterprising self learned how to use a coat hanger and a stripped coaxial cable to get 5 basic channels. I discovered the best areas to hang the coat hanger on a ladder outside my room, so on Saturdays, if I woke up in time, I could watch morning cartoons. Story 110. Finding enjoyment in every meal. Although my parents always made sure we went to bed with full bellies, sometimes all we had were canned sardines, frozen vegetables, and plain rice. Flavor was not a priority. Now, I find something to like about every dish and meal. There is hardly anything that I will push away and refuse to eat. I will try all foods at least once. Story 111. Eating breakfast and lunch at school was the only meal for the day. Learning how to turn your water on when the city cuts it off is also important. Story 112. I cannot speak for what a wealthy person can or cannot understand. However, I believe one thing that people I consider affluent do not grasp is that being poor is not solely defined by the balance in your bank account when it comes to survival. At least in America today, there are numerous social support systems available to help you manage expenses. I see many posts about aging parents who rely solely on Social Security, and their children often do not realize that they likely qualify for reduced rates on utilities, property taxes, mobile phone plans, and more. They may also be eligible for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program benefits. Do not misunderstand me. Being poor is difficult. I grew up in a low-income household, but my mother effectively sought all the assistance she could from various programs to reduce costs, particularly as she aged. She received free in-home care for her health issues and for household cleaning, in addition to the aforementioned reductions. Was it enough? Not really, but it was significantly better than relying solely on Social Security benefits. Story 113. I built vegetable garden beds out of sticks and branches I collected during walks in my city. I wish I could have bought regular materials. It has been very exhausting, A vehicle would have made it easier to transport the sticks and search for them further away. But I suppose my garden looks charmingly rustic. Story 114. Making potatoes in countless ways. Potatoes were the cheapest and most accessible ingredient we had in addition to oat flakes. Story 115. How to add water to soap, shampoo, or detergent. My husband disposes of items when they are empty. I retrieve them from the trash, add water, and use the remainder. Story 116. Stretching $20 to feed a family of 6 for a week. Growing up, I assumed that is how people lived. Times are much better now. Story 117. Inspecting the items I purchase and negotiating prices, especially for food-related items or things meant for long-term use, is important to me. Many people I know who grew up in more comfortable circumstances did not worry about buying products and discarding them if they did not meet expectations. My mother taught me to inspect our purchases to avoid wasting money and how to negotiate prices, which I have carried into adulthood. We were not considered poor by societal standards, but we did have a budget to adhere to. Story 118. Get a job at a restaurant so you can piece together a meal each day based solely on leftovers, mistakes, family meals, and abandoned takeout. Story 119. Having something to eat is important, even if it's just a bowl of cereal, a slice of bread with butter, or 2 raw carrots. Story 120. Pay attention to places that operate on a timer, such as self-service car washes. Many of these establishments provide more time per quarter to start the machine and less time for additional quarters once it is running. To save money, the best approach is to let the timer run out and then start it again. Story 121. When dining at a sit-down restaurant, order dishes that are large enough for at least 2 or 3 meals and can be reheated well. Story 122. Working on my own vehicle is not something I enjoy, but it saves me a lot of money. Some tasks can be tedious, but it is worth my time compared to paying thousands of dollars for things that cost only a fraction of the price when I do them myself. Story 123. Plumbing. Growing up in an old house, the pipes would freeze and break every winter, especially when someone forgot to leave the faucets running. This started when I was 11. Story 124. I am setting my washer to run through the night because it is cheaper for electricity. I plan to do everything in one day to only use the central heating for that day. Story 125. Couponing, saving, and reusing plastic bags and utensils, and having a drawer full of restaurant condiment packets. Story 126. Many comments come from individuals who still had shelter. I used to make a stolen bag of onions last a week on the streets of Sydney around 2000. Extremely means to the utmost, which is not the same as kind of. Story 127. How to put together a solution to make a device work instead of getting it fixed or buying a new one. Story 128. Packing light. As a student, I only flew budget airlines and minimized everything to meet the carry-on baggage limit. Meanwhile, I had a classmate who would casually upgrade to business class if she exceeded the checked baggage weight limit. Story 129. Leaving the apartment door open to warm up. The building heated the hallways, but we didn't turn on our heaters because we couldn't afford the bill. 5-minute showers. Story 130. How to create my own website. Now I have an ebook to help others. Story 131. Buying dented cans for a discount. Waiting in pizza places for people to finish and then sneaking over to grab any leftovers. Living in a house all summer without water service. Story 132. Years ago, when I was particularly poor, I sacrificed a tooth because I couldn't afford a root canal. I also turned down painkillers as I couldn't afford the prescription, and the infection spread into my jaw. My pain tolerance is quite high after those years. Everyone who grows up in poverty demonstrates a real knack for finding a bargain. Not because we are stingy, but because we remember the struggles of poverty. Story 133. I was a reservist in the Army in the late 1980s. There were not many good job options for someone just out of high school and returning from basic training. Working at a grocery store literally made my weekends off from the reserves my days off, and my 2 weeks of service in the summer were my vacation. I went on active duty to get more free time and to have extra cash and learn something marketable. I did not acquire a marketable skill, but it was classified, so employers assumed it was technical. Experiencing such challenges while scraping together every bargain available is not something a wealthy person would ever have to endure. Story 134. Being nice to people often brings positive returns. For example, at my favorite coffee shop, I receive complimentary drinks about half the time because the staff enjoy my visits and the jokes I share with them. Spread a bit of joy and it will come back to you. Story 135. Cleaning the dishes with your hand and then using a sponge to make it last longer. After it becomes old and dirty, the same sponge can be used to clean the bath, then the toilet, and finally the outside. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.